So today we're going to be looking at the 5 themes of geography: movement, regions, human environment interaction, location, and place. And if you notice, I highlighted in yellow the first letters of some of these, and it actually spells out Mr. Help. So hopefully that helps you remember our 5 themes of geography: movement, region, human environment interaction, location, and place. Okay, so our first one is movement. It's how people, goods, or ideas go from place to place. So, and how they get there. So we have a number of pictures that show tons of different movement, right? We have this city where there's a number of mopeds and some cars and some regular bicycles, and people are walking about, and looks like they're sitting at shops too. And we have train going through the mountainside. Trains are often used for moving goods, so that kind of talks about that. We have another city where we have a lot of taxis and people walking, and we have some trucks, which also often move goods. And so the ideas really could be spreading in any of these pictures, and they're even spreading as you watch this video, because I'm sharing ideas with you that you may or may not have known. So the movement of ideas is very easy, can happen as we talk to each other, can happen as we read things, can happen over the internet as you talk to people. So our second theme is region. So there's a few different types of regions, okay? There's a formal type of region, which is actually defined by the government. That's what makes it formal, is it's actually like laid out by the government. And those are things like, examples would be states, towns, cities, those kinds of things. Like the government says, this is a region, this is a state, like state of Indiana, right? Or the city of Anderson, or the city of Indianapolis, right? So those are regions. And then there are what's known as functional regions, which is where we have 2 or more formal regions that are near each other, and you can't really tell them apart because they're really similar. So like Anderson and Chesterfield are very similar, and we have the same school district, so that can be considered a region, in and of itself. As far as school districts go, like that might be partially defined by the government, right? Your local government. So functional region, Anderson, Chesterfield can be a functional region. If you want to think about, even more so, you also have your vernacular region, which is a little bit different. That's where everybody just knows what you mean. So like the South, the Midwest, the Bible Belt, those kinds of things would be considered vernacular region, where we just kind of know what that is. Vernacular is just another kind of fancy word for everyday talk. So how we just refer to ourselves, right? And then our third theme is the human environment or human environmental interaction. So for this one, this is how either we as humans adapt ourselves to the environment to survive, or how humans change the environment to survive. So we have a few pictures here. We have farming picture. This is a good example of how we change the environment, how we kind of have all of these plants planted in rows, and you can see some of the machinery. Another example of how we change the environment, we have different energy sources. It's a little bit covered up by me, but I guess kind of dual layers here. We kind of have a winter scene, and you can tell that she's wearing gloves, and she's wearing a coat and a hat. And so that's us adapting to the environment. Whereas right now, it's quite hot outside, so I'm just wearing a t-shirt, right? Adapting to the environment. That's something that in the Midwest we do a lot, with weather changes just constantly. We do a lot of adapting to the environment, right? Then our next theme is location. So there's two different types of locations. There's what's known as absolute locations and relative locations. So absolute locations are an exact particular spot. And it's very detailed as far as where it's going to be. It's an actual address. It is coordinates. So I used a picture of we have our longitude, the long ones, and we have our latitude, the flat ones, right? So we have longitude and latitude here, and so you could get exact coordinates for each of these stars. That those are all absolute locations, right? And then we have a local landmark right here, a relative location. If you said that something was by the Paramount, everybody in our town would know what that meant, right? Because everybody kind of knows where the Paramount Theater is. Right, it's our major local theater. And then our last theme of geography is place, right? So a place could be physical or it could be cultural or human. Those can be used interchangeably, right? So physical is something that you can actually touch, right? So mountains or valleys, it's like a place out where you can actually touch. Cultural and human may or may not be tangible. It could be things like religion or language. So I used a picture of a city. So we can say that maybe this is part of a region because maybe everybody there speaks the same language. Although, to be honest, likely in a major city, people don't all speak the same language. So you might have a cultural place that's only part of the city, right? Where people tend to speak this language or one of these two languages, right? So when you think about cultural regions, they could be smaller areas of city, or it could be multiple countries that speak the same language, or a smaller region over a couple different countries that speak the same language. So places can be physical, like an actual kind of mountains area, valleys area, or they can be human and cultural, right? So that's our last of our 5 themes. Remember our Mr. Help, movement, region, human environment interaction, locations, and place. Those are our 5. So now we're going to look at map projections. And in the map projections, it's really important that we know the pros and the cons of each map projection, because in the map projections, there's always good aspects and there's always negative things, right? So the first one is a globe. Pros of a globe is that it's very accurate. You can get the correct display of lines of latitude and longitude, and there's a correct display of landmass. There's no distortion, it's not stretched out, and making things seem bigger than they are, right? Because the Earth is globe-shaped, right? And the cons is that you cannot take it. You can't make it 2D very well, and you can't like carry it around. Like nobody takes a globe around with them when they're trying to figure out where they're driving the first time they're driving around somewhere new, because they are not super portable. I mean, you can, but not super helpful with those kinds of things. So that's why we don't use globes all the time, even though they're very accurate as far as their latitude and their longitude and how they display landmass, right? So then, next map projection is known as the Mercator map projection. So the pros of the Mercator map projection is that it's very easy to find locations because the latitude and the longitude right here are straight. They're exact straight lines. So it's very easy to find things. That's a plus. Being easy to find things is a plus, right? That's one of the reasons why we use maps. The con is that it distorts the shape and size of land. So like the US here is like very, very small, and like Greenland is like huge compared to the US, but like that's not accurate reality. And the same thing goes if you looked around, like for a lot of these other land masses, they're like stretched out, and you can kind of see how like here, even though they're straight, your scale starts to kind of, they're not the same size, you notice, right? So that's a downside. And then we have the map projections of equal area map projection. So the pro of the equal area projection is that your land size and shape are mostly accurate. Again, nothing that's 2D is going to be completely accurate. You have to use a globe, right? But they're mostly accurate with equal area, where you can kind of see like each of your boxes are really the same kind of amount, and it prioritizes having, you know, the right amount of area to have the size and shape be pretty accurate, right? Where you know, Africa is much bigger than the US. In some map projections, it doesn't look that way, right? But Africa is an entire continent. The US is just one country, right? The cons is that the latitude and longitude lines are curved. You can see that especially as you get to your north and south poles, they're curves, and so it's not as easy to find exact locations because you're looking on a curve, and that's just not as easy, right? And then you have map projections of the split projection. So the pro of a split projection map is that your landmass is mostly accurate. Again, you can't be 100% accurate unless you have a globe in that spherical shape, like the actual Earth is, right? So in your split projection, you can see your land masses pretty accurate. The con is that your ocean is distorted. So if you're using it for like going on a ship, this would be a very terrible map projection to have with you, because the ocean's like all cut apart. And so that makes it just generically not very easy for finding points. If I asked you to find an exact location in a split projection map, I mean, you could do it, but it would be much more difficult than some of our other map projections we've looked at.